For decades, if you thought about air travel, about luxury, about American power, there was really only one name that came to mind: Pan Am. Pan American World Airways. This wasn't just an airline. It was a whole cultural phenomenon, right? It was America's gateway to the entire world. So the big question is, how did this absolute giant of the skies, a symbol for an entire era, just vanish? Well, that's what we're here to do. Let's conduct a strategic autopsy and find out. And it is so hard to overstate just how powerful Pan Am was. This quote just nails it. They were the unofficial flag carrier of the U.S. Think about that. It projected this image of total glamour and influence wherever that iconic blue globe showed up. Seriously, it wasn't just a company, it was a global empire with wings. Which, of course, leads us to the big, shocking question at the heart of this whole thing. How does an empire like that just collapse? Well, it wasn't one single thing. It was this cascade of shocks from the outside, but, and this is the key, it was also about some really deep flaws on the inside. That's the mystery we're going to unpack.
Okay, so to really get the fall, you first have to understand the incredible heights they fell from. So let's go back. Let's go back to the golden age of jet travel, an era that Pan Am wasn't just a part of, they pretty much invented it.
Just look at this timeline. It really shows you their total dominance through innovation. 1958, Pan Am kicks off the entire jet age with the Boeing 707. The world suddenly got a whole lot smaller. Then, just a few years later, they go all in, betting huge on the massive Boeing 747, the jumbo jet. This made flying across the world possible for so many more people. You see the pattern, right? They were always first, always the biggest, always the one out in front.
But here's the thing. While Pan Am was ruling this glamorous, kind of predictable world that it helped create, that world was about to change, and I mean dramatically. A perfect storm was brewing, a mix of economic and political forces, and it was headed right for the airline industry.
So the first big blow lands in 1973. Just look at this chart. Look at that massive spike in jet fuel prices between 72 and 74. The OPEC oil embargo sends costs through the absolute roof. Now, if you're an airline whose whole fleet is built around these huge, thirsty, 4-engine jumbo jets, well, that's a direct shot to your bottom line. All of a sudden, their greatest asset, the mighty 747, was turning into a huge, expensive liability. And then, the earthquake hit. It was called the Airline Deregulation Act of 1978. Now, before this, you gotta understand, the government controlled pretty much everything. Who could fly where, how much they could charge. This new law just took that old rulebook and ripped it to shreds. And it had one goal: to create some serious head-to-head competition.
And look at the difference here. It's literally night and day. Pan Am was built for that before world. It was kind of like a cozy, exclusive club where having a prestigious name mattered way more than having a cheap ticket. But boom, overnight, they're thrown into the afterworld. And that was a brutal, no-holds-barred free-for-all. Suddenly, all these new scrappy, low-cost airlines jump in, and the name of the game wasn't luxury anymore. It was all about who could survive a vicious price war.
So here's the crucial thing to understand. Yeah, the oil crisis and deregulation were massive shocks from the outside. But Pan Am's fate, that was really sealed by its own internal problems. The company was just uniquely unprepared for this new reality, and it was because of 4 fatal flaws baked right into its DNA. Let's break them down.
All right, let's get into these because this is the core of how it all fell apart. First up, we've got cripplingly high fixed costs. I'm talking about an incredibly expensive way of doing business that was left over from an older, easier time. Second, they were super vulnerable to macroeconomic shocks. Their whole structure meant that when the global economy got a cold, Pan Am got pneumonia. Third, they were just shattered by deregulation. The rules of the game changed, and they were basically frozen, strategically paralyzed. And finally, a rigid, premium-only position. They were stuck selling a luxury product when the entire market was screaming for cheap seats. These were, for sure, the pre-existing conditions that made the final collapse inevitable. Man, this table pretty much tells you everything you need to know about their cost problem. Look over here, you've got Pan Am. They're stuck with these gas-guzzling 747s and really high, unionized wage contracts, all leftovers from that old regulated world. Then on the other side, you have these new low-cost guys. They're lean, they're non-union, and they're flying newer, super-efficient planes on only the routes that make the most money. There was just no way Pan Am could compete on price. It really was like a slow, powerful heavyweight boxer getting into a ring with a swarm of fast, lightweight street fighters.
And that brings us to the next massive problem. Their positioning was just completely rigid. Pan Am's entire brand, their whole identity, was built around this idea of a premium luxury experience. But after 1978, most people flying didn't give a hoot about champagne service. They wanted one thing, the cheapest ticket they could find. Pan Am was trying to sell a 5-star meal to a crowd that just wanted a burger and fries. And just like that, their greatest strength became their Achilles heel.
So, okay, weighed down by all these internal issues, struggling to survive in a world that just didn't get any more, Pan Am began its final tragic descent. A few more devastating blows were coming, and they would be more than this weakened giant could possibly handle.
Then, in 1988, the unthinkable happened. The terrorist bombing of Pan Am Flight 103 over Lockerbie, Scotland. It was, first and foremost, a horrific human tragedy, but the fallout for the company was also immense. We're talking about a financial hit of over $300 million. But honestly, the money was almost secondary. What was even more damaging was how it just shattered the public's confidence. The airline that had always been the very symbol of American safety and power was now connected to this absolutely catastrophic failure of security.
And this last timeline, wow, it's just brutal how fast everything happened. The Gulf War kicks off in 1990, and guess what? Fuel prices spike again, massively. For an airline that was already bleeding money, this was the final straw. Bankruptcy came just a few months after that. And then, December 4th, 1991, it was over. The icon was gone. The famous Clippers were grounded for good.
You know, the story of Pan Am is so much more than just a cool piece of aviation history. It's an incredibly powerful, timeless case study for any business. Its collapse teaches us some really critical lessons about strategy, about being able to adapt, and maybe most of all, about the danger of starting to believe your own hype. So what are the big takeaways here? Well, first, complacency is an absolute killer. Pan Am's past success made them think they were invincible, that their future was guaranteed. It wasn't. Second, you've got to have strategic agility. The market changed, it demanded something new, but Pan Am's strategy and brand were just stuck in the past. Third, those high fixed costs acted like a giant anchor in a storm. They just couldn't move. And finally, and this is a big one, external shocks rarely kill a company by themselves. What they do is shine a giant spotlight on the internal weaknesses that were there all along.
And that really just leaves us with one final thought. Pan Am seemed completely untouchable, right? Like a permanent fixture in the sky. So as you look around at the huge, dominant companies of today, it's worth asking yourself, which of them might be making some of these same mistakes? Which ones might be believing their own golden age is going to last forever?